Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. The next episode of Red Valkyrie is about to start. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Red Valkyrie. I am your host, Shae the Red, and I am here with the insanely talented Josh from Eudaimonia. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Shae. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. So what I was telling Josh before we started is I did not back this the first time around when it was volume 1. And before everybody tries to lynch me, I'm going to explain why. Because he's dealing with World War I, and that is a topic that I typically try to stay away from. However, basically everybody that I know who got it said, you're a complete and utter moron. You missed out on one of the best books that CG has made. And so when 2 came out, From Town to Trench, I said, okay, I hear you. I'm not going to be a dummy twice. And so I made sure to get back behind this. And the more I've seen it, the more I'm really kind of digging what this is. So I want to kick it straight over to you to go ahead and do your pitch for it, and we can all kind of get a look at it.
So Eudaimonia is it's a World War I tale. It's a little bit different from what you've seen from previous war books. It's less about the perspective of war from a kind of strictly geopolitical combat perspective, and it's more about the effect that the war has on people's lives. Eudaimonia comes from Aristotelian Greek philosophy. It's a basic idea of the life that's worth living. Like, what is it in your life that gives you meaning in order to kind of persevere and overcome? And so this is a story about a series of characters struggling to find their eudaimonia in the midst of this just chaos, this kind of mechanized chaos of World War I, when, the world essentially decided to start, pinning themselves against each other using new innovations in mechanized warfare. And so it's basically about people struggling to find meaning in something just kind of so utterly chaotic. So this story is Eudaimonia number 2 is a campaign that's going on. We have a couple of days left. It is essentially the story that kind of puts a ribbon on the first book. So the first book that we came out, we did. It's a pretty simple tale of one guy. There's some side characters. Number 2 is basically the story of those side characters and how their stories kind of put a different meaning, both narratively and philosophically, on the whole story. And so just kind of, by the end, it just kind of closes in on itself and creates a nice little package.
Wow. I'm super stoked hearing that I'm actually a little bit happy that I'm getting the first and the second together in this one, because I feel like it's going to be such a kind of like a complete story. I remember people saying from the first one that they really liked a lot of the side characters, but they didn't know much about them. And so it's I'm a little bit stoked that I'm gonna get that first experience of like, oh wow, this is really great. Okay, but I want to know more about the violinist. Let me go to the second book. And I have it right there. I don't gotta wait for it. I think that's gonna be awesome. So if you missed out the first time, please get it now and make sure that you don't miss out on what seems like a very beautifully told story of kind of the human nature and survival and everything. And I gotta say, like, the color palette is just kind of, it's striking in the right kind of ways. It hits the right tones, I think, especially for what you're looking at doing.
Yeah, there's actually a kind of there's like a color coded thematic kind of thing going on, where if you see a lot of primary colors, that kind of denotes a sense of peace, and then secondary colors kind of denote a sense of like kind of unrest. Mm-hmm. So like, this is a really good panel here. This is one of my favorite panels from the book. It's from the Harlem Hellfighters story. And you can see there's a lot of secondary, like you'd say it's predominantly secondary colors there. And it's from the end of the story, and his story is kind of up in the air, like what kind of direction he's going to be going in. So Yeah, that's why you see a lot of purples, but then also a lot of blues in there.
Right. Who is your artist?
My artist is Emi Utrera. He's Argentinian.
He is phenomenal. The expression on the faces of the people that he gets, it is very difficult to get really good selling expressions like that. And I gotta say, like, every time I see this panel, it makes me stop for a second. And I'm a massive empath. It makes me want to go and find this man to give him a hug. Like, he just looks like he's having just such a crisis of self, and it's just like I just want to hug him and be like, it's okay, you can get through it, because it's done so well. He looks so not beaten down, but just kind of like worried, genuinely worried.
Yeah, this what it is that I wrote for the story is actually, it's probably the most personal thing that I've ever written. It's from something I wrote called The Snowfall and the Streetlamps, and it's basically about how, like, for me, the most sublime, gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life is the sight of snow falling through the light beams of a street lamp. And so I thought it was kind of fitting to be able to make something this personal and apply it to a character, a fictional character that I created. Like, I kind of see myself as that character.
Yeah, I agree that there's something insanely peaceful about that moment. I'm from Utah, so I'm a snow bunny, except that I can't do any of the snow activities because I'm not coordinated enough to do all of the fun like skiing and snowboarding. I almost died the one time I tried, but I love, like, we used to go up to my grandmother's cabin, and you would go, there'd be 4 or 5 feet of snow, and it would just be insane. You'd watch snow come down through like the porch light, or you'd watch it against the moon, and it was just the most peaceful thing that you could ever witness. It's so calming.
Yeah, where I live right now, we don't get snow, and it's like agony.
Yeah, I'm really sad. I'm in Maryland now, and it's a crapshoot. And when we get snow, it's usually just kind of sad, pretend snow, and
What part?
Nasty black sludge. I'm bored. I'm by like the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. So.
Oh, okay. Because I moved out here from Salisbury, and I worked in Cambridge, which is like just over the bridge.
Okay. All right.
So if you ever see The Wire, where the one kid leaves the gang for a little bit, they put him in Cambridge. And they kind of put it in the show as if it's this like hillbilly backwoods town. It's like, that's not Cambridge at all. It's
okay. Where I am, they like to try and say that we're all just a bunch of racists. And I'm like, I like look around and go, nope, not getting that vibe. Sorry. I don't know who you're talking to around here, but okay.
Yeah, my father's actually in Annapolis.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second. So I was a record store manager there. Does this ring a bell at all?
Oh my gosh. It's I feel like I've heard of it. I haven't been there, but I feel like I've heard of it. Holy cow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's
awesome. We're gonna have to talk more off air for sure.
Yeah. It was like the record store chain in Baltimore.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or Balmer, however you say it.
I'm not from here, so I say it Baltimore because I pronounce letters. So you have Blue Samurai Zero. Sounds like the premise could be compatible with the film The Pianist, which
I don't think I've ever actually seen that. Isn't that?
I saw it forever ago. It was a very, very, very long time ago. Blue Samurai, I'm gonna have to watch it again. I'll have to watch it again, and then I'll read the books. And you could get yourself the books too, so you can read them, and then we'll have a discussion, and we'll see if it's compatible or not. Because that is actually kind of a neat idea that it could unintentionally be compatible with something that was big in Hollywood. Yes, Chris, today's gimmick is a soulless ginger. So it's difficult. It's difficult because all of these characters are very real. The closest I could get was this girl that you see back here. So I tried. I'm sorry that this is a lackluster one, but this is also a much more serious, heartfelt, real person kind of book. So it's going to be a little bit less. There's not, face paint and LEDs and craziness.
I promise that my next book will have more to do cosplay and fan art of. It's in the works. It's kind of hush hush for now, but it's going to be awesome.
I'm excited to hear more about that for sure. What exactly was it that inspired you the most to write this book, you think?
It's kind of a culmination of I recently graduated with my BA in English, and a lot of that was spent studying like philosophy and history. So like it's kind of a mishmash of Aristotelian philosophy, studying literature from World War I, and kind of just driving across the United States from one end to the other and seeing what like middle America is like. Like I grew up as like a city slicker. I grew up in like Philly and Baltimore and like DC and all those places. So when we kind of just got out in the middle of just nothing, like the kind of parts of the country where there's only 3 radio stations on the whole dial, and just kind of seeing that nothingness, it's not actually nothing, but just making me think about what it would be like if, what would it be like if somebody came back from war and was traumatized? How would that kind of play itself out in a part of the country that's so wide open and probably doesn't have a great deal of understanding? Like there's not enough people around you that anybody could know what it is that you're actually going through, or how things like secrets could transmit in such a like wide open area where there's not as many points of conversation between people. That was something that was a huge influence on me as well.
It's really interesting. And so what made you set it in World War One?
I usually say when you study like history and literature and philosophy, you tend to hone in on parts that interest you. I just found something really compelling when I studied the 3. World War I is where the Industrial Revolution meets warfare. It's where modern philosophy, modernist writing start to come into play, modernist poetry as well. You had this kind of like free verse comes out, for example, in poetry. Right. But then the soldiers that are fighting in World War I are mostly drawing from very classic forms of writing. So they're almost exclusively writing in free verse about this unbelievable, the unbelievable carnage of what they're seeing. And so if you actually study, I think there's something kind of profound about people wanting to just go home and wanting to return to what's comfortable for them, which would be, being in school, learning about Shakespeare and these very traditional things that very much feel like home. So when I started writing, I thought that was, kind of fitting for the subject matter, is to write the way those soldiers would have written.
No, that's actually it's really, really interesting that, so I've always been somebody who's hated history, but that's because I've always had teachers who wanted to focus on dates as if those are the most important parts of history. I had 1 or 2 really good history teachers that focused on the actual stories that you get into and what people are going through. And when you'd find people that had entire memoirs where they had pieced together letters from the front and all that kind of stuff, and they put them all together and said, this is what life was like for them. This is what these kids essentially were going through, because people were going off to war, so young, and they were leaving their sweethearts back home, and being able to kind of see all of those things through that lens, it really changed how I felt about a lot of that stuff in the past. That, and obviously, I mean, joining the military, you start to get a very healthy respect for military heritage and what people ahead of you had to do, really kind of getting into, specifically for me, being a female in the military, getting into what the women did to kind of support the front lines. And people like to think, oh yeah, well, the women, did a couple of things here and there. Like, you had women that were in just as much danger as their male counterparts were, because they refused to just sit back and let their country potentially get overrun. And all of that stuff was really, really inspiring to be able to kind of hear about. So I find it really interesting that you found a way to kind of tell a story that was very personal to you, that was very heartfelt to you, but you found a way to tell it through that lens of more of a historical kind of setting. because that's really hard to do. That takes a lot of putting yourself in another situation, really making sure that you have the historian side down where you're understanding everything, but also still being able to invoke your own emotion into it.
So I'll tell you a story. This is one of my favorite stories of World War One, and somebody who I think is one of the most overlooked figures of the war. There's this woman. Her name is Mary Borden. She came from a kind of wealthy Chicago family.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes over to Paris, which young people, especially wealthy ones, would do at the time. And when the war breaks out, she just decides like she has to do something. So what she does is she takes her family's money and uses it to set up a hospital that is actually operating closer to the front lines than even the Red Cross. And she gets her medical training or nursing training, and she just goes there and she just does whatever she can for the troops coming off the battlefield. And so in the book, the splash art pages always have a quote from a poet at the time. And she wrote a poem called "The Song of the Mud," and it's one of my it's probably my favorite World War I poem, and it's just about her describing these soldiers coming off the battlefield and just describing those images, and she calls it "The Song of the Mud," and it's just I think she's one of those kind of unsung heroes that's mostly lost to history. Not a lot of people know about her.
That's very true. I've heard about her briefly because of the the female aspect, setting up a clinic. I heard about that. I did not hear about her poem, and you actually got me to just Google it, so I have it for after this because I'm a huge poetry nerd. Usually I go for really dark stuff like Edgar Allan Poe, but I love heartfelt, emotion driven writing. I think that when you have somebody who can really kind of take the things that they're feeling and the things that they're experiencing and seeing and put all of that emotion into words to get other people who don't understand or have that frame of reference to still have that feeling. To me, that's magic. That's something that's amazing. So I'm really excited to read this after for sure. My goodness. Okay, so we had a question I want to get to before we go over your tiers. Blue Samurai, who unfortunately had to leave, he said he's going to catch the replay, but he wanted to know, is there any difference between the edition number ones besides the signature? Did you change any of the pages between this and the first one?
So the first one, I would say, I mean, it's going to be the first edition. That's one of the things I really like doing is having those little stamps on the cover that say first edition, second edition. So the first edition is the first edition. I do think the second edition is going to be a little bit better. This was literally my first time printing a book, doing anything like this.
Right.
Second edition is going to be perfect bound. So it's going to have Eudaimonia on the spine. It's going to have an ISBN. It's going to have a matte finish for the cover instead of glossy, because I like the gloss for the pages, but I just wasn't very big on having the cover that you have to like shield your eyes from.
Right. I'm more of a spot gloss with that like velveteen cover. Like that's my most favorite, because when you feel it, you're like, oh, it just feels so nice. It doesn't feel cheap and it doesn't feel overly shiny. I don't feel like I'm gonna have to buff the page, like the cover, to make it pretty again.
The most important difference, though, is going to be there are 2 pages in the first edition of the first book that should have been printed together like this, but it ended up, I don't know why I wasn't thinking. I should have thrown in some kind of an insert page so these 2 could be together, because it's literally like a table with images strewn across, and then the writing is there. So they should have been together, but in the first page, it's on one side, and then you flip it over. So that was the part of the first printing that just bugged me to no end. I don't know how it is that nobody's like, isn't this supposed to be together? But that will be corrected.
Okay.
In addition to the 2 grammar mistakes that my father emailed me to tell me about.
So your dad got the book and was like, "It's a wonderful book, son. A couple of critiques for you." And you're like, "That's great. It's not like it's already in multiple people's hands right now."
Yeah, they were minor. I don't think anybody else but him noticed.
Probably not. To be perfectly honest, probably just Pops, because he wants what's best for you and your project, obviously. All right, so let's go over your tiers real quick, and so people kind of understand what they're getting when they back you. So you've got your featured perk. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the featured tier is you're going to get Eudaimonia #1, the second print, the one that I kind of think is better, unless you're really into first editions, and then you're going to get the first edition of #2. Those come bundled together. Unfortunately, we did sell out of the print posters that came with that. That was only for the first 25 who buy, but that's definitely the way to go for me. I think it's the best deal. You're going to get them bundled with. You're going to get them bundled together. It's going to be in. It's not going to be in a freezer bag. It's going to be in an actual graphic novel bag together.
Nice.
Gemini mailers, not just cardboard boxes that somebody found in the dumpster behind Wendy's.
We've actually seen a lot recently too, where people are trying to put them in the manila folders to mail out, and then people are cramming those into boxes. So I'm happy to hear Gemini mailers.
it blows my mind. I had literally never done this before, and no issues whatsoever. Everything came safe and well protected. I don't see what the issue is.
Yeah, I think for some people it's a learning curve, and for some people maybe Geminis seemed like they were a little bit steep, especially if they didn't hit a very high funding goal. So I can understand making the mistake. I will still call it a mistake. Yeah. It is absolutely a mistake. If you're having a hard time finding Gemini mailers for your project at a price that you can afford, reach out to your fellow creators who have done this before, because there are ways to get it and have it be very cost efficient for you. And not to mention, for most of you guys, if you don't know, since these typically do not have any kind of ads or anything in them, you can do media mail, which is about $5 to ship anywhere in the US, which saves you a very good amount of money. And you can still ship them in Gemini mailers. Just make sure you check with your post office first. I know some are insistent on checking.
I wouldn't check with your post office, because your post office probably doesn't know either. You probably know more about it than they do. Yeah. I was told the first time that essentially all comic books and graphic novels do not count for media mail. And
that's false. As long as they don't have ads.
Yeah.
As long as there's no advertisement in it, it can go as media mail because it's a book. So I'm just throwing that out there for all you guys who might not know. And
if you want an ISBN and you find a website that wants to sell it to you for $80, that's not the website you should be using. They're like $18.
Oh, so there you go. $18, guys. You should not be should not be spending hundreds of dollars trying to get ISBNs.
Well, they try to bundle in all of these different things into it. Like, if you buy it from us, we'll get you listed on bedbathandbeyond.com. Like, I don't know. I don't want any of that.
That's not going to help me. All right, so that is your featured perk. That is the one that I would recommend. I'm 99% sure that is the one that I backed at, because I needed the first book anyway. So, and this was a great deal. It was bundled together. All right. Now you have the physical copy. So just the physical copy of the second edition, correct?
Just #2. I would say these two books really go together. If for whatever reason you only got the second one and you don't already have the first one, send me an email so I can send you a PDF copy, like a digital copy of the first one, because you kind of need them to go together. I wouldn't recommend that route, but I also wouldn't recommend just having the second without having any way of knowing, because you're going to be missing a lot of context. So let's say you just want the second one because it's all you can get behind. Just send me an email or shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'll just give you the digital copy, because you should have them both in some form.
Wow, that is awesome. I gotta say, I love it when people are that into their project that it's like, I understand that you may just now be hearing about it. You may only be able to back at one book level, but I need you to have the full story. So I will give you a PDF version of it so you can have that first bit. That I think it really shows where your head is and where your motivation is. This is an important project to you. This is a personal project to you, like you said. And so you want to make sure that people have the experience that you intend for them to have, and not half of it or part of it. You want them to have the full experience.
Yeah, I want the people that support me to enjoy the story. That's
Absolutely.
more important than anything.
And I love that. That makes me so happy to hear. All right, and so then you have the first edition. So this is the what you have left over from the first run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm looking to see how many we have left. Yeah, I think we have 10 left in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that, we have a bundle, the first edition bundle, where you're getting both first editions. And I think I have 2 left. Yeah, I think I have 2 left. So in total, I have 12 copies of the first print left for this campaign.
Wow. All right. So if this is something that you guys are wanting and you want that first print, because, I know people like to collect first prints. If you want that first print, you need to get in on this quickly. There's not that many left.
Yep. And that first edition print there, that's absolutely, if you're saying like, oh, that looks kind of familiar. Yes, that is from Pokemon cards. Absolutely the stencil, only it's gold instead of black.
Well, there you go. You know what? You own up to it. That's all that matters. All right. Page 18 bundle. What is this?
This is the original hand-drawn art from page 18 of the book. Mm-hmm. It comes with... Yeah, so you're getting both books and the original line art hand-drawn for this from Emmy.
I mean, that's $250 for both. For both books, and then a piece of original art. That's really not bad. A lot of these other campaigns have them for $500, $1,000, $2,000, depending on who it is. $250, and you're getting 2 books plus original line art. That's a really good steal. This definitely is that's a bargain for sure. And obviously you already had a splash page art bundle. That one sold out rather quickly, because who doesn't love a good splash page?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the guy who has that picture on as his Twitter handle. I could be wrong.
So he bought it and then he went, "It's mine now. This is now my avatar." Yeah.
He's going to make a mask out of it and just wear it.
Good for him. Good for him. He should just live his best life. All right, so you have 3 days left. Wow, you were really close to done. And this is it, right? You don't have another 30. We're not extending, or is that still a potential?
No, this is it.
This is it.
I kind of went back and forth on that. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, and I was like, well, everybody else is doing that. So I did the 30-day extension, and then like nothing really happened. I think next time I'm just going to go with like just straight 30, quit kidding around.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways. When the psychology works for you, in doing the extension, then it's great. But when it doesn't work for you, it's kind of like, well, now I just had to wait an extra 30 days to get fund release to start printing.
The first campaign I just did 60 days right out the gate, and it was basically like a 30 days in the middle that were just like these last 30 days. So like it ended up making almost no difference.
Yeah. Jason wants to know, is this going in demand? I just spent a lot and I can't back right now.
Yes.
Fantastic. That makes me very happy to hear. How long are you going to be in demand? Do you have an idea?
I don't know, but I know it's going to be longer than the last campaign. The last campaign, I made a pretty huge mistake in that I offered the first edition signature copies to be serial numbered. So when the campaign wrapped up, and I was like, well, I can't really do any... I basically have to shut this down because I only have a finite number that was sold. Otherwise, if I don't shut it down now, it's going to be in demand, and then that number could... Basically, nobody would get their book until I shut it down, because I had to have that finite number on the book. So,
right.
Lesson learned. Didn't do that this time.
I guess the only other way that you could have done that would have been if you made it like a exclusive run that had the numbers, and then everyone after that did not have the number counter. Therefore, they weren't part of the initial, which is kind of a pain to have to do, and it does kind of cheapen it, especially because unless you're going to change the cover art and everything, which I mean you shouldn't, because your cover arts are beautiful and they're very iconic for what this is, but unless you were going to change it, it's kind of
So
Not
don't have like 30 different cover arts.
Please, no,
Hmm.
don't do that. That's how you go broke in a campaign is when you offer like 500 different covers and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I've got to print all of these." And
Yeah.
every time, so for people who haven't checked into this, every time you do a new print cover, that's a new plate that printer has to make. If that printer has to make a new plate, you get charged a fee to make that plate. It's a one-time fee, but most of them I looked at, it's between 80 and $100 per plate. So all of you guys out there is like, I'm gonna have 30 covers. Stop it. Stop it right now. 2, maybe 3. Do not do more than that. That is how you go broke. Okay. So pay attention. Um, all right. So we also have Justin with a really, really good question. How difficult is it to do a poetic story? The book was amazing, and telling a story in rhyme scheme seems tough. Do you write the story and go back to make the poem after?
I kind of just develop a skeletal framework of events that I know need to happen, and then I go and I sit down, I make myself a pot of coffee, and I write. This was back when I was basically writing a sonnet a day for almost an entire year, so every single day, and so it just became this thing that you just do so often, and you just kind of get it down to like being able to put those beats together, those word formations and structures and rhyme schemes together, that it just becomes very kind of simple. So that's why like I'm kind of hesitant to say that like just calling it just a poetic story. It's really a story that's told using a poetic structure. I think of a poem as being something very different from a verse told story. But yeah.
Okay. That's a so here's a personal question. As somebody who tries to write poems or a rhyming scheme throughout a story, do you run into the issue where you start to realize that you rely on very similar rhymes and you have to like catch yourself to not get into the same like not this basic but like cat bat hat
Yeah.
at, and you're like, okay, I need to stop this and it needs to be an entirely different rhyme. Like I need to stop making these rhymes.
Well, okay, so something to help with that. When I write, okay, it's a sonnet, so it's going to be 4, 4, 4, 4, and then a rhyming couplet at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I usually try to think of like, all right, what do I really want to say happens in this poem? And then it ends with this word. So you just have one word at the end of your rhyming couplet. And then you need to have something to rhyme it with. And then you think of like, well, what are 3 ways I can go to describe this? What's a word I really need to have in there? And now I have another word, and then I have another word and you just kind of work your way backwards. As far as repetition, yes, that is something that is hard. And I found that as I went back through reading, I would basically get the art for the page, and then I would just almost rewrite it from scratch as I'm doing the lettering to kind of remove those similar phrases or similar words, unless I thought it was something that was like really important. I noticed that I used the word crescendo in the second book like 3 times. It's a lot about music, and the word crescendo being, the big moment. I was like, wow, I'm using the word crescendo a whole lot in this. And so, yeah, it did become like a kind of an exercise because you end up putting cliches into your own writing format or your own writing style.
Yeah, I noticed that that's something that I have been doing a lot in my writing, because I kind of go more the dark, like kind of more Edgar Allan Poe-esque route where things are dark and a little bit overly dramatic, but it's all for effect to get a point across. And I started going back through and reading, and I was like, I've got 4 poems here, and I use the same 6 words in every single one of them. And I'm gonna have to space these out massively, and I'm gonna have to find a way to not use these 6 words for the next like 10 poems I write. Otherwise, I'm just gonna sound like I have a 50-word vocabulary, and that's all I can manage.
I'm telling you, get a thesaurus.
Oh yeah. Oh, so the fun thing about being military, we're not allowed to repeat words. Thesaurus is my best friend. But I also don't want to turn into, I don't know if you've ever watched Friends, when Joey gets to write the
word of the day, toilet paper.
No, he's got the speech for Chandler and Monica's wedding, And he wrote the first one, and he was like, basically he just kept on saying like, it's very special when you find a special person, and then that connection is special. And they were like, okay, it's a good start, it needs a little work. And so then he goes to a thesaurus, and he literally used it on every word in his speech, to the point to where it no longer made any sense and everything he said was wrong.
Yeah,
that's the problem with thesauruses sometimes.
Another really good resource is if you have a couple bucks to spare, the OED online, particularly if you want to write in a particular time period, because you can look up a word and it will tell you specifically what point in history it was used. It'll help you find like other, similar words, but from different time periods. So I would definitely recommend that for anybody who wants to write from a historical perspective, is to like take the time, learn to talk the talk, and learn about, what was considered common parlance when you're writing.
Okay. What was that called again?
The OED, the Oxford English Dictionary. They have an online form, but it's subscription based.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So for anyone who is interested, and I know it's probably a very small group of you in the chat, but whatever, I post the link in there anyway, because you know what? We all could use a little education sometimes. Why not? So this, okay, here's my other question, not related to the campaign. What is it specifically that got you into writing? Like, have you been writing ever since you were a kid, or was it just when you started really focusing on it in college, or what was that thing that really said, I'm a writer?
I mean, not to be too like Freudian, but every boy wants to grow up and be their father. And my father was somebody who was just like a very natural storyteller, and he could frame like the most, mundane occurrence in a way that seemed really compelling. And so just growing up with somebody like that and wanting to emulate that, it's just what I kind of naturally gravitated towards, is trying to find a way to to tell not interesting events, but events in an interesting way, in a way that will, kind of compel the interest out of the reader. Right. I know that my books aren't, I know comic books are like traditionally like fantastical, and I know that my writing isn't that, in this at least.
Right.
But I'd like to think that that's something I've done pretty well at, is being able to kind of frame things in a way that my audience will find compelling.
I'm excited. So we have a show that we do every Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we'll talk a little bit after about it, but if you would like it's called Writing Prose, and we literally just get a panel of people who write. We have a topic that we loosely stick to because we're writers, so we squirrel real easy. Someone will say one thing and it leads down 50 rabbit holes, and we don't really stay on topic the entire time. But basically the whole point is to talk about the aspects of storytelling that we really like, and talk about what's important to us and what we think, like intellectually, what we think should be happening with stories, things that we hate that people always do in them, because there's a lot of that. So it would be wonderful to get you on one of those shows some Sunday if you are free, because I think you have a really good perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I especially now I'm feeling particularly isolated, just how the world is right now. And like, I haven't had a good talk about the craft, you know what I mean? Like the craft of composition,
sitting down and writing and exactly.
Yeah. It's something I've definitely missed, and I'd definitely be interested in pursuing that.
Fantastic. I will add you to that group, because I think that I think you'd have a lot that you could kind of offer. And we have Will. I don't know if you know who Will is. Will Perdomo, he's the writer for Black Flag. Basically, he's there to berate me and to make all of us feel like we're dumb and haven't read anything in the history of ever, because he's a very intellectual, analytical kind of writer and thinker. I think the two of you would probably get along very well with
that. Or like
You know, either way, it would make for good YouTube.
I like forever. I've had people like forever to tell me like, "Oh, you're very intellectual." Like, I think I'm an idiot, like a complete idiot. So we'll
I
see.
mean, I really do. Like, I say I'm a writer, and then I get on these shows, and I'm like, "That's dumb," and people are like, "And you use words good." I'm like, "I like words. I suck at them. I mispronounce them all the time. I use them incorrectly, but you know what? I fucking like them."
I mean, my wife has a PhD in English, and she can't spell for shit.
Yeah, I literally spend a large part of my day, both professionally and personally, typing, and I am a hunt and peck typer, and I don't understand how I've gotten very fast at it, but I also have typos up the ass. Anyone
Yeah.
who's ever DM'd me can tell you.
I was actually a competitive speller as a kid, so it's something I noticed, but I also notice like it's utterly meaningless. Like it's like meaning, like what a person means to say matters. How, if you get what they mean, it's basically it's useless. It's unimportant to call people out on it, but that doesn't stop me from noticing it constantly. It's kind of like a curse. I'm just a really good speller who doesn't care about people's misspellings.
Yeah. I'm the same. Like I'm good at math, but I hate it. But I'm good at it for whatever reason. And so people are like, "What is this?" And I'm like, da da da. And they go, "How do you know?" I'm like, "I don't know. Don't ask. My brain does it. My brain does it without me. Like I'm more consciously right brained, but I guess like subconsciously I'm left brained. I don't know what's going on. I'm messed up, is what I'm saying. It's fantastic. Chris C says, "Thinking you're an idiot is the first step towards enlightenment." So, well on your way. I think that every writer is a little bit self-deprecating, and every writer is a little bit like feeling like they're unworthy of any kind of accolades or anything like that. Like, yeah, okay, I can say things that are entertaining to some people, but it's nothing special. And you don't realize until you come across somebody who literally can't express themselves and say what they want to say. And I've got quite a few friends like that who basically try to bring me around when they're having an important conversation, because they're like, "Shae, I need you to translate what I'm saying so I actually say what I mean." And they'll say something and I'm like, "That isn't what they mean. They mean this, this, and this." And then people are like, "Oh, that makes more sense." I was like, "Yeah, I speak their language," because they don't have that same gift. And you don't realize that it is a gift until you're around people who don't have that ability. And all I have heard about your book, about the first one, is this book is phenomenal. Shae, you're a dumbass for not getting it the first time around. So if you like Shae, we're a dumbass, you can go rectify that right now. You got 3 days left, and then this is staying in demand, thankfully, for people who might have missed it, and maybe funds are a little tight, which I completely understand. Trust me, very, very well understand. We did get you one more backer. You were at 117, so we're at 118 now, which is fantastic. And we didn't play your video. Is your video a good video? Do you enjoy your video?
I do, but it's like if you want to see me make a video mostly out of MS Paint and Windows Movie Maker, like it's kind of worth it, like the price of admission just for that. So
I mean, I'm kind of sold, and I'm kind of feeling like maybe we want to see MS Paint and Movie Maker. That sounds interesting. All right, we're gonna play this. I'm very curious now.
MS Paint. If anybody in the chat, either before or after this goes up, if anybody can tell me what song that piano drum sample is from, free physical copy of the second book.
Oh, all right. So you heard the challenge, chat. Figure out what that piano segment was from. It sounds really familiar, and what's in my head can't possibly be right, but it sounds so familiar, and I know you're gonna eventually release what it was, and I'm gonna kick myself for not knowing. It for MS Paint Movie Maker, it really wasn't bad at all. I was expecting a little bit more rough around the edges, for sure. Yeah, this is a really interesting book. So do you have any stretch goals or anything that you're doing with this?
Not really. My stretch goals are as follows. We hit the first one, and basically the way it works is since we hit 5K, I told you that this was basically composed one page by one page in a coffee shop. Mm-hmm. And I still have all of those original handwritten first drafts for each page. So since we hit 5K, I'm going to choose 10 of those randomly and just put them in the book where they were. So 10 people are going to receive the actual original handwritten pages. And I think it's something like if we hit 6K, it goes up, or I know it ends at like 10K, but it basically like the more goals we hit, the more of those pages are going to get kind of just randomly put out there for people to have. Okay. And it's kind of like a thank you for like, hey, if you like this enough to support it, here's like an actual like piece of its history for you to just have.
Absolutely. That is so cool. That is so cool. I love when people include those little bits. And I know there's a couple of campaigns out there right now that are just wanting to give away original artwork. And that to me, because I'm somebody who loves original artwork, but I can never afford it. And I always look at it and I'm like, well, it is worth the price that you put up there. But Shae works 2 jobs and one of them's the government. So that doesn't pay super great.
Like, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anybody do because this is handwritten like, well, poem.
Yeah, I have not seen handwritten notes.
On my first campaign, I had that as like a expensive tier, but I didn't, because it's not the same thing as art. And I kind of learned from that campaign is like, these pages are kind of cool. It's not the same thing as having like an actual piece of art. So I thought it would just be better just like include them as something you can just give away.
I love that. I think that's amazing. Dark Lord wants to know, is it from an old TV show?
No.
Frankie says Dirty Dozen.
Also no.
You guys are failing me, chat. You're normally so good at these challenges.
I'll give one clue.
Ooh. Oh, it can't be. Hold on. All right, check your private. Check the private chat in the StreamYard. It can't be that.
No.
Okay. I was like, I swear if it's that.
Great song, but no.
Yes. I'm not going to tell them what song I guessed because I'm not going to help them. I want the challenge. I want to see my chat rise above. And if you manage to get this while we are still live, or if you get it in the comments, we will pass it along to Josh.
Yeah.
However, I don't know. That's a rough challenge because that is a very small snippet just looped back on itself. And
if you back the book and you get it, I don't know what I can give you, but I'll give you something.
We'll figure it out.
I mean, you can't have this, copy.
But... You signed up your standee. Here you go. It's kind of big. Don't worry about it though, because it's what?
Oh, this is great. I got this to do a local Comic-Con like about a month before the whole world shut down.
Yeah. Yep. I've got a couple of those. I was doing cons for SE Tonks, who has zombiepudding.com. So I had some of his made up, and they're nice. They look really professional. They're not super expensive, but just expensive enough for you to go, oh. Well, honestly, this is this is a really great campaign. You are quite well funded, which is nice to see, past your goal, but you also had a goal of $500. Let's be real. This should be a lot higher than what it is, because this is a really beautifully done, carefully constructed project. And I think that you're really giving people a special, unique kind of experience here. Is there any little final bits that you want to throw out there about the project?
We've got a couple days. The most important thing I can say is that I've been blown away from the first campaign to this campaign for all the people who've, been supportive of somebody who's a complete unknown, who just kind of came out of nowhere, writing a kind of weird book with a kind of a weird style. And I'm just really grateful to everybody who's taken a look at this and been like, yeah, I'm in. Like, I like this. I want to support it. I appreciate people coming on, and I appreciate getting the word out, but it's important for me to always let people know how grateful I am, no matter what stage you came in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for all that. I hope to continue to make books that you enjoy. The next book, we're working on it now. It's going to be even weirder. It's going to be even more out there, and it's called How to Die.
I like it. I like it. So is this the end of this series?
Yep. This has basically been it always intended to be two issues to kind of just like dip my toe in the water and see if people enjoy what I have to put out there, and it's gone good. So we
awesome.
Keep moving forward.
Christopher C says, unless it's a Billie Holiday song, I'm stumped on jazz. Lothar D says, Riders on the Storm. Nope. Max says you're going to have a bunch of original artwork for your campaign. That's awesome to hear, dude. At a reasonable price, which is amazing, because we got a bunch of people that are broke as a joke, like Shae, right on over here. Super broke, but that's okay. I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat for coming out and being so supportive. You guys are amazing. I know that this was kind of weird because I had to change the time. Thank you so much to Josh for being so sweet and flexible. You made my life a lot easier. I was able to get a little bit of food and have a breather after a very hectic, stressful part of my day that was not supposed to happen. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody in the chat for coming by. Everyone who watches this on replay, you guys are amazing. Please make sure that you go and back this book. It is a beautiful project. I'm about to drop the link one more time in the chat. It's also in the description. So please go and get in on this as soon as you can. It's sure to be a very interesting, wonderful ride. One more guess. Thelonious Monk? No. Oh, you guys are trying. Keep it up. Keep trying. Make sure that you post whatever you think that song, that piano riff might be from. Put it down in the comments on the video. Tag us on Twitter, whatever you got to do. But let's see if we can't get this mystery solved, because now I am highly intrigued and I really want to know. And I want to see somebody get a free book. That's awesome. But thank you, everyone, for coming out. Please like, share, and subscribe to Red Valkyrie. We are so close to our 1K subs. And guys, I'm not even remotely kidding. I went to my local comic book shop that is unfortunately shutting down, and I got a ton of goodies that I'm going to be giving away in packs. I'm working on getting some original artwork done, all kinds of really cool stuff that we're going to do to thank everybody for helping us get to 1K subs. So please tell your friends, tell your family, share this out. Let's make sure that we get more backers for this amazing project. Let's make sure that we put a smile on Josh's face here. And Chris is just going to keep trying these guesses. Dizzy Gillespie. No. All right. I am calling it. No more guesses. You guys have a fantastic night, and we will catch you all next time. See you later.